A summary and analysis of 1984 by George Orwell. Big Brother is watching you. Part 1, Chapter 1 of George Orwell's 1984 introduces the reader to the protagonist, Winston Smith, and the dystopian society of Oceania he lives in. The chapter begins with Winston returning to his apartment building, Victory Mansions, on a cold day in April. The hallway of his building smells unpleasant and features a large poster of a man with a black mustache, captioned with the words "Big Brother is watching you." This poster highlights a key theme in the novel, surveillance. The citizens of Oceania are constantly monitored by the thought police, who utilize telescreens to observe and listen to people's every move and word. This constant surveillance creates a climate of fear and paranoia, discouraging any form of dissent or independent thought. Winston's act of starting a diary is a direct act of rebellion against the party's control. Writing in his diary provides him with a private space to record his thoughts and feelings, a space free from the watchful eyes of Big Brother. He initially struggles to articulate his thoughts but is driven by a need to express his suppressed emotions and memories. The 2 minutes hate, a daily ritual of mandatory hatred directed towards the party's enemies, is described in detail. This event further emphasizes the party's use of propaganda and manipulation to control the populace. The figure of Emmanuel Goldstein, the supposed leader of the Brotherhood, a rebellious organization, is presented as the target of the 2 minutes hate. The intensity of the hate and the frenzied reactions of those participating highlight the effectiveness of the party's indoctrination. During the 2 minutes hate, Winston notices O'Brien, an inner party member, and believes he sees a flicker of agreement in his eyes. This brief encounter sparks a hope in Winston that there might be others who share his rebellious thoughts. This interaction lays the foundation for their future connection and Winston's belief that O'Brien is a member of the Brotherhood. By the end of the chapter, Winston commits his rebellious act by writing down with "Big Brother" repeatedly in his diary. This action underlines his growing defiance and marks a turning point in his journey towards rebellion. The chapter concludes with Winston feeling the weight of the party's power and the constant surveillance that permeates his life. The intrusion of the Parsons family and the seeds of rebellion. Chapter 2 of 1984 further explores the oppressive atmosphere of Oceania and introduces characters who embody the party's influence, while also revealing Winston's growing sense of unease and rebellion. The chapter begins with Winston being startled by a knock at the door, interrupting his thoughts about the party and the paroles. The intrusion comes from Mrs. Parsons, his neighbor in Victory Mansions, seeking his help with a clogged drain. This seemingly mundane interaction highlights the pervasive reach of the party, as even domestic life is not free from its influence. The Parsons apartment is described as messy and chaotic, with posters and party slogans adorning the walls, showcasing the family's fervent loyalty to the party. The Parsons children, members of the party's youth organizations, the Spies, and the Youth League, represent the party's successful indoctrination of the younger generation. Their fanaticism, particularly their propensity to report even their parents to the thought police, further underlines the chilling effect of the party's constant surveillance and the disintegration of trust within families. The children's enthusiasm for violence and militaristic play, mimicking the party's rhetoric, underscores the effectiveness of the party's propaganda in shaping their worldview. Winston's discomfort and fear of these children highlight his awareness of the dangers posed by their blind allegiance and the potential consequences of his own rebellious thoughts. The episode with the Parsons family is juxtaposed with Winston's reflections on the past and his continued attempts to piece together his fragmented memories. He grapples with the party's control over history, recognizing their ability to rewrite the past and manipulate the present. This struggle is central to his desire to rebel, as he seeks to hold on to his own memories and perceptions of reality despite the party's efforts to erase them. The chapter concludes with Winston's determination to continue his diary, writing down with "Big Brother" in large, bold letters. This act of defiance, fueled by his growing awareness of the party's manipulation and his encounter with the Parsons family, solidifies his commitment to resist the party's control. In contrast to the more overt propaganda seen in Chapter 1, Chapter 2 focuses on the insidious ways in which the party infiltrates private life and manipulates the minds of its citizens from childhood. Through the portrayal of the Parsons family, Orwell demonstrates the effectiveness of the party's indoctrination and the dangers it poses to individual thought and freedom. Winston's increasing awareness of this danger further fuels his rebellion and sets the stage for his future actions. Fabricating Truth and the Allure of Newspeak. Chapter 3 of Star 1984 plunges into Winston's fragmented memories, his work at the Ministry of Truth, and the insidious nature of newspeak, highlighting the party's control over history and language. The chapter begins with Winston waking from a disturbing dream, haunted by images of his mother and a feeling of guilt. This dream foreshadows his later confrontation with the party's manipulation of personal relationships and emotions. The chapter then introduces the concept of doublethink, the ability to hold two contradictory beliefs simultaneously and accept both as truth. This mental discipline is crucial for party members to navigate the constantly shifting narratives and historical revisions enforced by the party. Winston's internal struggle with doublethink underscores the difficulty of maintaining individual thought and integrity in a society where truth is malleable. Winston's job at the Ministry of Truth involves altering historical records to align with the party's current narrative, effectively erasing any evidence that contradicts their version of reality. This systematic manipulation of information highlights the party's absolute power in shaping the past and controlling the present. The memory hole, a chute for discarding unwanted documents, serves as a chilling symbol of the party's obliteration of inconvenient truths. The arrival of Syme, a philologist working on the Newspeak dictionary, introduces the party's efforts to control language as a means of limiting thought. Syme's enthusiasm for Newspeak's goal of reducing vocabulary and eliminating nuanced language demonstrates the party's desire to restrict thought and expression. His explanation of how Newspeak will eventually render thoughtcrime impossible reveals the chilling implications of the party's linguistic control. Winston's encounter with the dark-haired girl from the fiction department further fuels his rebellious desires, as he suspects she might share his subversive thoughts. This suspicion is based on a brief moment of eye contact during the 2 minutes hate, and it becomes an obsession for Winston, highlighting his longing for connection and his desire to find others who resist the party's control. The chapter concludes with Winston reflecting on the party's ability to manipulate statistics and information to create a fabricated reality. This manipulation is evident in the party's claims of increased production and improved living standards, which directly contradict the lived experiences of the citizens of Oceania. Winston's awareness of this discrepancy further fuels his resentment and his desire to rebel against the party's fabricated truth. Chapter 3 expands on the themes of surveillance and propaganda introduced in the previous chapters, emphasizing the party's control over information, history, and language. Through Winston's work at the Ministry of Truth and his conversations with Syme, Orwell reveals the insidious methods by which the party maintains its power, demonstrating how language and history can be manipulated to shape thought and control reality. Winston's growing awareness of these manipulations further fuels his rebellion and intensifies his longing for a world where truth and individuality are valued. Forging a Hero in the Disappearance of Truth. Chapter 4 of Star 1984 focuses on Winston's work at the Ministry of Truth, specifically his task of fabricating a heroic figure for the party's propaganda machine, further highlighting the party's manipulation of reality and the malleability of truth. The chapter opens with Winston receiving a routine assignment to rectify historical records, which involves altering past news articles and speeches to conform to the party's current narrative. This task exemplifies the party's continuous effort to maintain a consistent and controlled version of history, erasing any evidence that might contradict their ideology. Winston's work highlights the party's systematic approach to rewriting history. He receives messages with specific instructions on which articles or news items to alter, ensuring that the historical record aligns with the party's ever-evolving agenda. This meticulous process demonstrates the party's dedication to maintaining a carefully crafted narrative, further emphasizing their control over information and their ability to shape public perception. One specific example of Winston's work involves altering a past speech by Big Brother to predict an event that had already happened. The party's need to rewrite history in this manner suggests a desire to maintain the illusion of Big Brother's infallibility. By ensuring that Big Brother's predictions always come true, the party bolsters his authority and solidifies their control over the populace. Another instance involves adjusting a previous promise made by the party regarding the chocolate ration. Winston is tasked with replacing the promise with a warning of a potential reduction, demonstrating the party's willingness to manipulate even basic necessities to maintain control. This manipulation underscores the party's disregard for the well-being of the citizens and their focus on maintaining power through any means necessary. The chapter then shifts to Winston's most challenging assignment, creating a fictional hero, Comrade Ogilvy, to bolster the party's propaganda. This task involves fabricating an entirely new persona, complete with a detailed biography and fabricated accomplishments. This creation of a fictional hero epitomizes the party's ability to manufacture reality and manipulate the public's perception of truth. Comrade Ogilvy is designed to embody the party's ideal citizen, exhibiting unwavering loyalty, dedication, and adherence to party principles. His fabricated life, filled with militaristic zeal from a young age, serves as a model for others to emulate, reinforcing the party's desired social norms and values. By creating this fictional exemplar, the party further tightens its grip on the minds of its citizens, encouraging conformity and obedience. The chapter concludes with Winston feeling a sense of satisfaction in his work, highlighting the insidious nature of the party's control. His ability to lose himself in the intricacies of fabrication demonstrates the effectiveness of the party's indoctrination, blurring the lines between reality and fiction. This blurring is further emphasized by the party's use of double-plusungut, a newspeak term that exemplifies the party's attempt to simplify language and restrict thought. Chapter 4 delves deeper into the mechanics of the party's control, focusing on their manipulation of history and their creation of fabricated realities. Through Winston's work at the Ministry of Truth, Orwell exposes the dangers of a society where truth is malleable and controlled, raising questions about the nature of reality and the power of propaganda. By crafting a fictional hero, the party not only reinforces its control over information but also shapes the values and aspirations of its citizens, creating a society where individuality and critical thinking are suppressed. Lunch with Syme and the Erosion of Language. Chapter 5 of Star 1984 introduces the character of Syme, a newspeak expert, and explores the party's efforts to control language as a means of controlling thought. It also highlights Winston's growing sense of isolation and his search for connection. The chapter opens with Winston encountering Syme in the queue for lunch at the Ministry of Truth. Syme, a small, intense man, is obsessed with the development of newspeak, the official language of Oceania. He excitedly discusses the progress of the 11th edition of the Newspeak Dictionary, focusing on the elimination of words and the simplification of language. Syme's enthusiasm for newspeak is disturbing to Winston. He understands that the party's goal is to narrow the range of thought by limiting the vocabulary available to express it. Syme believes that by 2050, Old Speak, Standard English, will be completely eradicated, and with it, the ability to think or express thoughts that are contrary to the party's ideology. This concept horrifies Winston, who values language and sees it as essential to independent thought and freedom of expression. Syme's detailed explanation of newspeak's structure and purpose reveals the party's sinister intentions. He explains how words with negative connotations will be replaced with ungut or double-plusungut, eliminating the need for subtle distinctions in meaning. This reductionist approach to language aims to eradicate critical thinking and emotional depth, leaving only simplistic concepts that are easily controlled by the party. During their conversation, Syme casually mentions the public hanging of prisoners, revealing the party's brutality and the normalization of violence in Oceania. His morbid fascination with the details of the execution underscores the desensitization of party members to cruelty and suffering. Winston's unease with this conversation further emphasizes his moral and emotional distance from the party and its ideology. The chapter also highlights Winston's attraction to the dark-haired girl from the fiction department. He observes her during lunch, noticing her youthful energy and rebellious demeanor. He fixates on the possibility that she is a member of the thought police, projecting his own anxieties and fears onto her. This obsession reflects Winston's desire for connection and his longing for someone who might share his rebellious thoughts. The chapter concludes with Winston and Syme eating their meager lunch in the drab and crowded canteen. The atmosphere is oppressive and impersonal, highlighting the dehumanizing nature of life in Oceania. The constant surveillance of the telescreens reinforces the feeling of being constantly watched and judged. This oppressive environment further fuels Winston's sense of alienation and his desire to rebel against the party's control. Chapter 5 expands on the theme of linguistic control introduced in previous chapters, showcasing the party's efforts to manipulate language as a tool for thought control. Syme's passionate explanation of newspeak and his casual acceptance of violence illustrate the party's success in molding the minds of its members. Winston's repulsion at Syme's views and his attraction to the dark-haired girl further emphasize his growing awareness of the party's tyranny and his yearning for a world where individuality and freedom of expression are valued. The weight of memory and the urge to rebel. Chapter 6 of Star 1984 explores Winston's yearning for human connection and his struggle to make sense of the past in a world where memory is tightly controlled. It begins with Winston reflecting on his brief encounter with the dark-haired girl and his growing belief that any hope for rebellion must lie in the proles. This belief stems from the proles' sheer numbers and their relative freedom from party surveillance. Winston attempts to write in his diary, but finds himself paralyzed by the fear of being caught by the thought police. The ever-present telescreen and the knowledge that even his thoughts are not private create a stifling atmosphere of fear and self-censorship. He is reminded of a recent encounter with O'Brien, a high-ranking inter-party member, during the 2 minutes hate. O'Brien's demeanor and a fleeting moment of eye contact had given Winston a flicker of hope that O'Brien might share his rebellious thoughts. However, Winston acknowledges that this is just a guess, as any attempt to verify such a suspicion is impossible under the party's watchful eye. Winston's musings are interrupted by Mrs. Parsons, a neighbor from Victory Mansions, who asks for help with a clogged drain. Her children, members of the party youth organizations, are portrayed as zealous enforcers of party orthodoxy, highlighting the party's success in indoctrinating the younger generation. This encounter further emphasizes the pervasiveness of party surveillance and the constant threat of betrayal even within the confines of one's own home. Winston tries again to write in his diary, but the weight of the party's control over the past leaves him feeling hopeless. He contemplates the party's slogan, "Who controls the past controls the future, who controls the present controls the past," and grapples with the implications of a society where history is malleable and subject to the party's whims. The concept of doublethink, the ability to hold two contradictory beliefs simultaneously and accept both as true, is introduced as a key mechanism for party members to navigate this constantly shifting reality. Despite his fear and despair, Winston feels a powerful urge to rebel. He returns to his diary and, in a moment of defiance, writes down with "Big Brother" repeatedly in large, bold letters. This act, though small, represents a significant break from the party's control and marks a turning point in Winston's journey towards rebellion. The chapter concludes with a knock on the door, leaving Winston in a state of heightened anxiety and fear of discovery. Chapter 6 showcases Winston's growing awareness of the party's control over memory and his desperate search for a way to resist. The encounter with the Parsons children and his struggle to articulate his thoughts in his diary illustrate the pervasiveness of party surveillance and the difficulty of maintaining individual thought in a totalitarian state. His act of writing down with "Big Brother" signifies his commitment to rebellion, setting the stage for his future actions. Fleeting hope in the prole's untapped potential. Chapter 7 of Star 1984 centers on Winston's reflections on the proles and their potential for rebellion against the party, while also highlighting the limitations of his own understanding of the past and the oppressive nature of the party's control. The chapter begins with Winston writing in his diary, expressing his belief that if there is hope, it lies in the proles. This statement reflects his growing conviction that the proles, who constitute 85% of Oceania's population, hold the key to overthrowing the party. Winston sees them as a powerful force, largely ignored and underestimated by the party, capable of instigating a revolution due to their sheer numbers and relative freedom from surveillance. However, Winston also acknowledges his limited knowledge about the proles and their lives. He admits to relying on vague rumors and party propaganda to understand their history and experiences, highlighting the party's successful efforts in keeping the proles isolated and uninformed. Winston tries to reconcile the party's claims of liberating the proles with the reality of their impoverished and controlled existence. He notes the inconsistencies in the party's narrative, such as the continued exploitation of women in coal mines despite claims of their emancipation. This discrepancy further fuels his skepticism towards the party's version of history and its supposed concern for the proles' well-being. The chapter then depicts a conversation between Winston and his neighbor, Parsons, who embodies the uncritical acceptance of party propaganda. Parsons boasts about the Ministry of Plenty's achievements, citing fabricated statistics about increased food production and improved living standards. This exchange underscores the party's effectiveness in manipulating its members into believing blatant lies and celebrating fabricated successes. Winston's internal monologue contrasts sharply with Parsons' blind faith. He remembers a time when the chocolate ration was higher and reflects on the party's ability to erase inconvenient truths from public memory. He questions whether he is the only one who remembers the past accurately, highlighting his growing sense of isolation and his struggle to hold on to the truth in a world where reality is constantly manipulated. Winston's observations of the proles' daily lives reveal a mixture of apathy, resilience, and occasional flashes of rebellion. He witnesses a group of proles engrossed in a heated argument over the lottery, their passion contrasting with the party members' emotionless conformity. This scene suggests that the proles, while seemingly unconcerned with politics, still possess a capacity for strong emotions and independent thought. Winston attempts to engage an elderly prole in a conversation about life before the revolution, hoping to glean insights into the past unfiltered by party propaganda. However, the old man's memory is fragmented and unreliable, offering no concrete answers to Winston's questions. This encounter underscores the difficulty of accessing accurate historical knowledge and the party's successful efforts in obscuring the past. The chapter concludes with Winston feeling a sense of helplessness and frustration, recognizing the immense challenge of awakening the proles' revolutionary potential. He returns home, haunted by the fear of the thought police and the knowledge that his rebellious thoughts could lead to his arrest. Chapter 7 explores the complex relationship between the party and the proles, highlighting the party's efforts to control and manipulate them while simultaneously downplaying their significance. Winston's observations and reflections on the proles reveal his hope for their eventual rebellion, but also his awareness of the significant hurdles that stand in their way. His struggle to understand the past and his growing sense of isolation further emphasize the party's oppressive control over information and memory. A chance encounter and the allure of the forbidden. Chapter 8 of Star 1984 follows Winston's venture into the prole district, where he seeks remnants of the past and grapples with his desire for rebellion against the party's control. Winston's actions in this chapter build upon his earlier thoughts about the proles' potential for resistance. The chapter opens with Winston feeling drawn to the prole district despite the inherent risks. This attraction stems from his belief that the proles hold the key to overthrowing the party, as discussed in the previous chapter. He recognizes the danger of own life, a newspeak term for individualism and eccentricity, but the allure of the forbidden and the desire to connect with the past compel him to venture into this unfamiliar territory. Walking through the prole district, Winston observes the stark contrast between the proles' lives and those of party members. The proles live in dilapidated buildings, wear worn clothes, and lack the constant surveillance that permeates party life. Their existence, while seemingly impoverished, appears more authentic and less controlled than the sterile world of the party. Winston encounters a group of proles engrossed in a passionate argument about the lottery, their emotional intensity a stark contrast to the subdued demeanor of party members. This scene further reinforces Winston's belief that the proles, while seemingly apolitical, possess a capacity for genuine emotion and independent thought that has been suppressed in party members. Continuing his exploration, Winston visits a junk shop where he had previously purchased his diary. He purchases a heavy glass paperweight containing a piece of coral, drawn to its beauty and its connection to a past era. This seemingly insignificant act represents Winston's desire to hold on to tangible remnants of history and beauty in a world where the party seeks to control every aspect of life. The chapter's climax occurs when Winston encounters the dark-haired girl from the fiction department. She falls and seemingly injures her arm, prompting Winston to assist her. This unexpected encounter sparks a mixture of fear and excitement in Winston, who has been increasingly fixated on the girl and her potential connection to the thought police. As he helps the girl, she discreetly slips him a note, which he later discovers contains the message "I love you." This unexpected declaration throws Winston into a state of emotional turmoil. He is simultaneously thrilled by the prospect of a connection with someone who might share his rebellious spirit and terrified by the potential consequences of such a relationship. Chapter 8 marks a significant shift in Winston's journey towards rebellion. His exploration of the Prole district and his encounter with the dark-haired girl fuel his desire to break free from the party's control and find human connection in a world defined by isolation and fear. The note with the message "I love you" represents a spark of hope and a catalyst for Winston's future actions. A note and a shift in Winston's reality. Chapter 1 of Part 2 in star 1984 marks a pivotal moment in Winston's journey, as his clandestine encounter with Julia sets in motion a chain of events that challenge his perception of reality and fuel his rebellion against the party. The chapter opens with Winston's mundane routine at the Ministry of Truth, where he is still reeling from the note Julia slipped him in the previous chapter. The memory of her message, "I love you," consumes his thoughts, creating a sense of anticipation and anxiety. Winston's internal struggle is heightened by the constant surveillance of the telescreens and the fear of betraying his emotions. He is forced to maintain an outward appearance of conformity while his inner world is in turmoil. This duality underscores the party's control over individual expression and the psychological toll it takes on its members. The chapter further emphasizes the party's pervasive influence through the portrayal of Parsons, Winston's blindly loyal neighbor. Parsons' enthusiastic chatter about the preparations for Hate Week serves as a stark contrast to Winston's growing disillusionment with the party. This juxtaposition highlights the party's success in indoctrinating some citizens while others, like Winston, struggle to maintain their individuality and critical thinking. A glimmer of hope emerges during a brief encounter between Winston and Julia in the ministry canteen. Despite the risk of being observed, they manage to exchange a few whispered words, arranging a clandestine meeting in Victory Square. This furtive exchange, fraught with danger, signifies Winston's willingness to take increasingly bold steps toward rebellion. The meeting in Victory Square is a pivotal moment in the chapter, as Winston and Julia navigate the crowded space, aware of the telescreens and potential informants. Julia takes charge, guiding Winston through a series of maneuvers to evade surveillance and eventually leading him to a secluded area outside the city. This shift from the oppressive urban environment to the natural setting of the clearing in the woods symbolizes a temporary escape from the party's control and a return to a more primal, authentic human experience. Julia's confident demeanor and her knowledge of how to circumvent the party's surveillance further challenge Winston's perception of her as a potential enemy. As they talk in the clearing, Julia reveals her pragmatic approach to rebellion, focusing on personal acts of defiance rather than grand ideological struggles. This contrast with Winston's more intellectual and idealistic approach to rebellion highlights the diverse forms that resistance can take. Chapter 1 of Part 2 marks a turning point in Winston's journey, as his connection with Julia opens up new possibilities for rebellion and challenges his understanding of reality. The chapter underscores the party's pervasive control over daily life while simultaneously showcasing the potential for individual acts of defiance. The shift from the oppressive city to the natural freedom of the woods symbolizes a temporary escape from the party's grasp and sets the stage for Winston and Julia's burgeoning relationship and their increasingly daring acts of rebellion. The embracing of forbidden love and rebellion. Chapter 2 of Part 2 in star 1984 focuses on Winston and Julia's first intimate encounter and their subsequent conversations, revealing their shared disdain for the party and their contrasting approaches to rebellion. The chapter begins with Winston and Julia meeting in the secluded clearing in the woods, a location that represents a temporary escape from the party's omnipresent surveillance. Winston, initially hesitant and overwhelmed by the risks involved, finds himself swept away by Julia's confident and pragmatic approach to rebellion. Their first physical encounter is a deliberate act of defiance against the party's control over sexuality. By embracing their desires and engaging in a forbidden relationship, Winston and Julia assert their individuality and reject the party's attempt to suppress human instincts and emotions. This act signifies a rebellion not only against societal norms but also against the party's manipulation of human nature for its own gain. Afterward, Winston and Julia engage in conversations that further reveal their contrasting personalities and approaches to rebellion. Winston, consumed by his intellectual understanding of the party's oppressive mechanisms, expresses his hatred for the party and his desire to dismantle its power structure. He seeks knowledge and understanding as a means of fueling his rebellion. Julia, on the other hand, demonstrates a more instinctual and pragmatic approach to resistance. She focuses on personal acts of defiance, seeking moments of pleasure and freedom within the confines of the party's control. While Winston is preoccupied with grand narratives of history and ideology, Julia is concerned with the immediate gratification of her desires. This difference highlights the multifaceted nature of rebellion and the various ways in which individuals can challenge an oppressive system. Julia shares her knowledge of the party's inner workings, gleaned from her time working in the fiction department. She reveals the party's methods of fabricating and manipulating information to control the minds of its citizens. This revelation further strengthens Winston's conviction that the party's version of reality is a carefully constructed lie designed to maintain its power. The chapter also touches upon the theme of the prole's potential for rebellion. Julia expresses her belief that the proles are stupid and unlikely to rise up against the party. This cynical view contrasts with Winston's earlier hope that the proles held the key to overthrowing the party. Their differing perspectives on the proles' role in the fight against the party highlight the complexities and uncertainties surrounding the possibility of a successful rebellion. Chapter 2 of Part 2 marks a significant development in Winston's journey toward rebellion. His intimate relationship with Julia provides him with a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose, while their conversations reveal their contrasting approaches to challenging the party's control. The chapter also raises questions about the nature of resistance and the potential for a successful rebellion against an all-powerful and oppressive regime. The intertwining of love, rebellion, and fear. Chapter 3 of Part 2 in 1984 explores the evolving relationship between Winston and Julia, the challenges they face in their clandestine affair, and the constant threat of discovery that looms over their every move. This chapter builds upon the themes of rebellion and the search for human connection established in the previous chapters, further emphasizing the oppressive nature of the party's control over every aspect of life. The chapter opens with Winston and Julia waking up in the secluded clearing after their first intimate encounter. The setting, a natural haven away from the watchful eyes of the party, provides a temporary respite from the constant fear and surveillance that pervades their lives. This idyllic setting serves as a stark contrast to the stark, sterile world of the party, highlighting the allure of freedom and the yearning for genuine human connection that Winston and Julia share. However, the idyllic setting is not without its dangers. Julia, more pragmatic and attuned to the realities of their situation, warns Winston about the potential threats they face, including the possibility of hidden microphones and the presence of the thought police. This constant awareness of danger underscores the precarious nature of their relationship and the high stakes involved in their rebellion. As they continue their clandestine meetings, Winston and Julia engage in conversations that reveal their shared contempt for the party's ideology and their contrasting approaches to rebellion. While Winston is consumed by his intellectual understanding of the party's oppressive mechanisms and seeks to dismantle its power structure, Julia focuses on personal acts of defiance, seeking moments of pleasure and freedom within the confines of the party's control. Their differing perspectives are highlighted in their discussion of the party's slogans. Winston, struggling to reconcile the party's contradictory pronouncements, expresses his confusion over the slogan "War is Peace." Julia, more pragmatic and less concerned with ideological nuances, dismisses Winston's concerns, suggesting that the slogan is merely a tool of manipulation. This exchange emphasizes their different ways of processing the party's propaganda and navigating the complexities of their rebellion. The chapter also introduces Syme, a philologist working on the 11th edition of the Newspeak dictionary. Syme, a fervent believer in the party's ideology, discusses the principles of newspeak and its aim to limit thought by reducing the vocabulary of language. Winston, observing Syme's unquestioning loyalty and his role in shaping the party's language, predicts that Syme will eventually become a victim of the party's purges. This foreshadowing underscores the party's tendency to eliminate those who are too intelligent or who pose a potential threat to its control, even those who are seemingly loyal. It also reinforces the theme of the party's manipulation of language as a tool of control, a theme that is central to the novel's exploration of totalitarianism. The chapter concludes with a disturbing encounter between Winston and a prole woman. The woman, aged and worn, represents the harsh realities of life for those outside the party. Winston, initially drawn to the woman as a symbol of the prole's resilience and potential for rebellion, is ultimately repulsed by her physical appearance and her mundane existence. This encounter challenges Winston's earlier romanticized view of the proles as the potential saviors of Oceania, highlighting the complexities of their situation and the difficulty of fostering rebellion in a society where even basic survival is a constant struggle. Chapter 3 of Part 2 further develops the central themes of love, rebellion, and fear that permeate 1984. It explores the complexities of Winston and Julia's relationship, the challenges they face in their clandestine affair, and the constant threat of discovery that hangs over their every move. The chapter also introduces the insidious nature of newspeak and its role in limiting thought and controlling the minds of citizens, while simultaneously challenging Winston's earlier idealized view of the proles as potential agents of change. Establishing a sanctuary and facing inner demons. Chapter 4 of Part 2 and 1984 centers on Winston and Julia establishing a secret love nest above Mr. Charrington's junk shop, a space that symbolizes their rebellion against the party's control. The chapter also reveals Winston's deep-seated anxieties and fears, highlighting the psychological toll of living under constant surveillance. The chapter opens with Winston securing a room above Mr. Charrington's shop, a seemingly inconspicuous location that offers a temporary refuge from the party's watchful eyes. This act represents a significant step in Winston and Julia's rebellion, as they create a private space where they can express their love and defiance without fear of being observed. Julia takes charge of transforming the room into a cozy and intimate haven, bringing in real coffee, sugar, and other forbidden luxuries that represent a rejection of the party's austere and controlled lifestyle. These small acts of rebellion, though seemingly insignificant, hold great symbolic weight, as they represent a reclaiming of personal freedom and a rejection of the party's attempts to dictate every aspect of life. As Winston and Julia settle into their secret hideaway, the chapter shifts focus to Winston's internal struggles and his growing unease about the consequences of their actions. He is plagued by nightmares and memories of his past, revealing the deep-seated trauma that the party's regime has inflicted upon him. One particularly disturbing memory centers on Winston's encounter with a prostitute, an act that highlights the party's distortion of human sexuality and the psychological toll of its repressive policies. This memory, coupled with Winston's recurring nightmares and his fear of rats, underscores the oppressive atmosphere of fear and paranoia that the party has created. The chapter also touches upon the theme of memory and the party's control over history. Winston reflects on the party's ability to rewrite the past and manipulate information to suit its own agenda. This realization reinforces his understanding of the party's power and the fragility of truth in a totalitarian society. Despite his anxieties, Winston finds solace in his relationship with Julia. Their shared love and defiance provide a sense of hope and purpose in a world where individuality and freedom are constantly under threat. Chapter 4 of Part 2 marks a crucial point in Winston and Julia's rebellion, as they establish a physical space that embodies their defiance of the party's control. However, the chapter also reveals Winston's inner turmoil and the psychological scars that the party's regime has left on him, reminding the reader of the constant threat of discovery and the high price of rebellion in a totalitarian society. A life on the precipice, embracing rebellion and facing the consequences. Chapter 5 of Part 2 in 1984 focuses on the intensification of Winston and Julia's rebellion and the increasing risks they take as their relationship deepens. The chapter also marks the disappearance of Syme, foreshadowing the party's ruthlessness in eliminating those deemed a threat, regardless of their loyalty. The chapter opens with Winston reflecting on the changes he has undergone since beginning his affair with Julia. He feels healthier, more alive, and less burdened by the party's oppressive presence in his life. This transformation underscores the liberating power of love and human connection in a society that seeks to suppress such emotions. However, this newfound sense of freedom comes at a price. Winston and Julia's actions grow bolder, pushing the boundaries of what the party deems acceptable. They make love in their secret room above Mr. Charrington's shop, a space that has become a sanctuary for their rebellion. This act, a direct violation of the party's control over sexuality, signifies a deliberate rejection of the party's ideology and a reclaiming of their personal autonomy. Their rebellion extends beyond their physical relationship. They begin to openly discuss their contempt for the party and their desire to see it overthrown. Winston reads aloud from Goldstein's book, sharing the forbidden knowledge with Julia. These acts, fueled by a shared sense of defiance and a growing belief in their ability to challenge the party's authority, illustrate the escalating nature of their rebellion. The chapter also highlights the constant threat of discovery that hangs over Winston and Julia. They are acutely aware of the party's surveillance and the potential consequences of their actions. The ever-present telescreens, the watchful eyes of the neighbors, and the fear of the thought police create a pervasive atmosphere of paranoia and suspense. Winston, haunted by nightmares and consumed by his intellectual understanding of the party's methods, worries that their rebellion is doomed to fail. He recognizes the party's immense power and its ability to crush any dissent. This growing sense of foreboding foreshadows the tragic fate that awaits them. The chapter also marks the disappearance of Syme, the philologist Winston had predicted would become a victim of the party's purges. Syme, despite his fervent loyalty and his role in shaping the party's language through newspeak, vanishes without a trace, becoming an unperson erased from history. Syme's disappearance serves as a stark reminder of the party's ruthlessness and its willingness to eliminate anyone deemed a threat, regardless of their apparent loyalty or usefulness. It also underscores the party's absolute control over information and its ability to manipulate reality to suit its own agenda. As Winston and Julia's relationship intensifies, so too does their belief in the possibility of a wider rebellion against the party. They discuss the proles and their potential role in overthrowing the party, clinging to the hope that these dumb masses may one day rise up and challenge the party's authority. However, their conversations also reveal their contrasting approaches to rebellion. Winston, driven by his intellectual understanding of the party's oppressive system, seeks to dismantle the party's power structure. Julia, more pragmatic and focused on personal freedom, aims to carve out moments of happiness and defiance within the confines of the party's control. Despite their differing perspectives, Winston and Julia's shared love and their mutual hatred of the party fuel their rebellion, leading them further down a dangerous path. Chapter 5 of Part 2 illustrates the exhilarating yet perilous nature of rebellion in a totalitarian society. It showcases the transformative power of love and human connection, while simultaneously highlighting the constant threat of discovery and the party's absolute control over every aspect of life. The disappearance of Syme serves as a chilling reminder of the party's ruthlessness and the high price of dissent. Winston's longing for connection and the allure of the past. Chapter 6 of Part 2 in star 1984 focuses on Winston's yearning for a connection with the past and his belief that the proles hold the key to overthrowing the party. The chapter follows Winston's encounter with O'Brien, a high-ranking inter-party member, which ignites a flicker of hope for a potential alliance against the party's oppressive regime. The chapter opens with Winston experiencing a moment of profound loneliness and isolation. This feeling of despair stems from the realization that he is living in a world where genuine human connection is stifled, and the past is systematically erased by the party. Winston's longing for a connection with the past is evident in his desire to understand what life was like before the party's rule. Driven by this yearning, Winston decides to venture into a prole neighborhood. He seeks out a pub frequented by proles, hoping to glean some insight into their lives and their memories of the past. Winston's interactions with the proles, particularly with an elderly man he engages in conversation, highlight the stark contrast between the prole's lived experiences and the party's fabricated version of history. The old man's fragmented memories of life before the revolution prove unreliable and offer Winston little in the way of concrete evidence to challenge the party's narrative. Despite the disappointment of his encounter with the old man, Winston clings to the belief that the proles, with their vast numbers and their relative freedom from party indoctrination, represent the only hope for overthrowing the party. He views them as a potential force for rebellion, capable of dismantling the party's power structure from within. A pivotal moment in the chapter occurs when Winston unexpectedly encounters O'Brien at the ministry. This encounter, seemingly coincidental, fuels Winston's belief that O'Brien may share his rebellious sentiments and could be a potential ally in the fight against the party. O'Brien's subtle acknowledgement of Winston's presence and his brief, seemingly meaningful exchange with him ignite a spark of hope in Winston's heart. This encounter reinforces Winston's conviction that there are others within the party who oppose its oppressive regime, even if their dissent remains hidden beneath a facade of conformity. Chapter 6 of Part 2 explores Winston's desire to connect with the past and his belief that the proles hold the potential for rebellion. The chapter also highlights the significance of Winston's encounter with O'Brien, which serves as a catalyst for his hope and his determination to challenge the party's authority. Grappling with memories and finding hope in the proles. Chapter 7 of Part 2 in Star 1984 Star focuses on Winston's exploration of his past and his evolving understanding of the proles as a potential force for revolution. The chapter delves into the complexities of memory, the party's control over history, and the enduring spirit of humanity in the face of oppression. The chapter begins with Winston grappling with a powerful and disturbing memory from his childhood. He recalls the sudden disappearance of his mother and younger sister during a time of political upheaval. This memory, filled with guilt and a sense of responsibility for his family's fate, highlights the traumatic impact of the party's regime on personal lives and family relationships. It also underscores the party's willingness to erase individuals from history, leaving behind only fragments of memories and unanswered questions. Winston's reflections on his past lead him to consider the role of the proles in the party's system of control. He recognizes that the proles, who constitute the vast majority of Oceania's population, are largely ignored and disregarded by the party. He believes this neglect stems from the party's perception of the proles as a simple, unthinking mass, incapable of posing a threat to its authority. Winston, however, challenges this view. He sees in the proles an inherent strength and resilience that has allowed them to preserve their humanity and their capacity for love, loyalty, and basic human emotions. He contrasts the proles' unfettered emotional lives with the party members' rigid adherence to the party's ideology, which has eroded their capacity for genuine human connection. Winston's belief in the proles' potential for rebellion is fueled by his reading of Goldstein's book. Goldstein's writings confirm Winston's suspicions about the party's motives and its methods of control. The book explains how the party manipulates history, manufactures enemies, and uses war as a tool to maintain power and suppress dissent. Goldstein's book also emphasizes the importance of the proles as a revolutionary force. It argues that only the proles, with their sheer numbers and their relative freedom from party indoctrination, have the power to overthrow the party and create a more just and equitable society. Inspired by Goldstein's ideas, Winston writes in his diary, "If there is hope, it lies in the proles." This declaration reflects his growing conviction that the proles are the key to breaking the party's grip on power. However, Winston also acknowledges the challenges of mobilizing the proles. He recognizes that they are largely unorganized, uneducated, and easily distracted by the party's propaganda and the simple pleasures of life. Despite these obstacles, Winston clings to the belief that the proles possess an inherent humanity and a latent power that could one day be harnessed to challenge the party's authority. Chapter 7 of Part 2 showcases Winston's evolving understanding of the proles as a potential force for revolution. The chapter explores the themes of memory, the party's control over history, and the enduring spirit of humanity in the face of oppression. This chapter also builds on Winston's earlier encounter with O'Brien in Chapter 6, as it suggests that Winston's hope for a connection with others who oppose the party's regime is growing stronger. While Winston's belief in the proles as the ultimate source of hope is central to this chapter, his brief but meaningful exchange with O'Brien continues to offer him a glimmer of hope that he may find allies within the party itself. A dangerous invitation, embracing the Brotherhood. Chapter 8 of Part 2 in Star 1984 marks a turning point in Winston and Julia's rebellion as they take a significant step towards actively engaging in organized resistance against the party. This chapter centers on their clandestine meeting with O'Brien, a move fraught with danger but also filled with a sense of hope and purpose. The chapter opens with Winston and Julia's growing confidence in their ability to evade the party's surveillance. They successfully arrange a secret meeting in O'Brien's luxurious apartment, a stark contrast to the drab and oppressive world of the outer party. This meeting symbolizes a crossing of boundaries, as they venture into the inner sanctum of the party's power structure, a place that represents everything they despise. The atmosphere of O'Brien's apartment, with its dim telescreen, rich carpets, and the aroma of real wine, creates a sense of unreality for Winston and Julia. This world of privilege and comfort, so different from their own, emphasizes the vast chasm that separates the inner party from the rest of society. It also highlights the party's hypocrisy, as it indulges in luxuries while denying them to the masses. O'Brien's demeanor during the meeting is both captivating and unsettling. He speaks with a quiet authority that commands respect and inspires trust, yet there is a hint of irony in his words and gestures that leaves Winston and Julia uncertain of his true intentions. O'Brien's intellectual prowess and his apparent awareness of Winston's rebellious thoughts fuel Winston's belief that he has found a kindred spirit within the party's ranks. The climax of the chapter comes when Winston and Julia declare their allegiance to the Brotherhood, a shadowy organization rumored to be working to overthrow the party. This act of defiance, a culmination of their growing rebellion, represents a significant shift from their earlier acts of personal rebellion. They are no longer content with merely carving out small spaces of freedom for themselves, they are now actively seeking to dismantle the party's power structure. O'Brien's confirmation of the Brotherhood's existence and his willingness to induct Winston and Julia into its ranks fills them with a sense of purpose and belonging. They have finally found a group of like-minded individuals who share their hatred of the party and their desire for a better world. However, this sense of hope is tempered by the knowledge that they are embarking on a dangerous path. O'Brien outlines the risks and sacrifices involved in joining the Brotherhood, emphasizing the constant threat of discovery and the possibility of torture and death. He warns them that they will be operating in the shadows, receiving orders without knowing the reasons behind them. This chapter ends with a toast to the past as Winston, Julia, and O'Brien share a drink of wine. The toast symbolizes their longing for a time before the party's rule, a time when freedom and individuality were cherished. It also foreshadows the potential for the past to serve as a source of inspiration and guidance in their fight against the party. Chapter 8 of Part 2 is a pivotal chapter in Star 1984 It marks a significant escalation in Winston and Julia's rebellion as they move from acts of personal defiance to actively engaging in organized resistance against the party. Their meeting with O'Brien, while filled with a sense of hope and purpose, also highlights the immense risks and sacrifices involved in challenging the party's absolute authority. Shifting alliances and the power of propaganda. Chapter 9 of Part 2 in Star 1984 showcases the party's masterful manipulation of reality and the fragility of truth in a totalitarian regime. It depicts a dramatic shift in Oceania's political landscape, challenging Winston's understanding of the past and highlighting the party's absolute control over information. The chapter opens with Winston, exhausted from overwork in preparation for Hate Week, grappling with the ramifications of his involvement with the Brotherhood. He carries Goldstein's book, entrusted to him by O'Brien, feeling its weight both physically and metaphorically. The book represents forbidden knowledge, a potential weapon against the party's control over history and truth. While reading Goldstein's book, Winston is struck by the clarity and logic of its analysis of the party's motives and methods. He realizes that the party seeks power for its own sake, not for the good of the people. The party's aim is to maintain absolute control over every aspect of human life, crushing individuality and dissent. However, the stability of Winston's newfound understanding is abruptly shattered during a hate week rally. As the crowd's fury reaches a fever pitch, directed at Oceania's enemy, Eurasia, a sudden announcement changes the course of the rally and the course of Winston's world. The speaker seamlessly transitions mid-sentence, switching Oceania's enemy from Eurasia to Eastasia, as if the previous narrative never existed. This jarring shift throws the crowd into a frenzy of activity, tearing down posters and replacing them with new ones that reflect the updated enemy. Winston observes this manipulation of truth with a mixture of horror and fascination. The party's ability to rewrite history in an instant and the crowd's unquestioning acceptance of the new reality underscore the power of propaganda and the fragility of truth in a totalitarian state. This event throws Winston's entire understanding of the past into question. If the party can so easily erase and replace a war that lasted for years, what else might they have altered or fabricated? This realization leaves Winston feeling deeply unsettled and reinforces the themes of memory, the party's control over history, and the malleability of truth that were introduced in previous chapters. Following the rally, Winston retreats to his secret room above Mr. Charrington's shop to continue reading Goldstein's book. He is eager to understand the mechanics of the party's power and the potential for resistance. He reads to Julia, sharing the forbidden knowledge with her, hoping to find solace and strength in their shared rebellion. Chapter 9 of Part 2 is a stark reminder of the party's absolute control over information and its ability to manipulate the past to serve its present agenda. The sudden shift in Oceania's enemy during the Hate Week rally is a chilling demonstration of the party's power to shape reality and erase dissent. This chapter builds upon the themes and events of previous chapters in several ways. It expands upon the themes of memory and history that were central to Chapter 7, showing how the party actively manipulates the past to maintain its grip on power. It also adds a layer of complexity to Winston's relationship with O'Brien, introduced in Chapter 6 and developed in Chapter 8. While Winston believes O'Brien is a fellow rebel, the events of this chapter suggest that O'Brien's true allegiances may be more complicated than they appear. The closing image of Winston and Julia reading Goldstein's book in their secret room offers a glimmer of hope amidst the party's overwhelming control. Their shared act of defiance suggests that the human spirit's quest for truth and freedom can endure even in the most oppressive of circumstances. However, the dramatic events of this chapter foreshadow the precariousness of their rebellion and the formidable challenges they face in challenging the party's authority. A moment of peace shattered, the end of freedom. Chapter 10 of Part 2 in star 1984 star serves as a devastating turning point, marking the abrupt and brutal end to Winston and Julia's illusion of freedom. The chapter starts with a fleeting sense of tranquility and contentment, highlighting the simple pleasures they have found in their rebellion. However, this peaceful interlude is shattered by the sudden intrusion of the thought police, bringing their world crashing down around them. The chapter opens with Winston and Julia awakening in their secret room above Mr. Charrington's shop. They are enjoying a rare moment of peace, indulging in the luxuries of real coffee, sugar, and privacy, things denied to most citizens of Oceania. The presence of a prole woman singing outside their window adds to the sense of normalcy and security, a stark contrast to the ever-present surveillance and paranoia of their daily lives. As Winston listens to the prole woman's song, he reflects on the power of the proles, representing the vast majority of Oceania's population, who live outside the strictures of the party. He sees them as a potential force for change, a sleeping giant that could one day awaken and overthrow the party's oppressive regime. This hopeful thought reinforces the themes of resistance and the power of the individual that have been building throughout Part 2. However, this moment of optimism is short-lived. A sudden voice behind them shatters the peace, revealing that Mr. Charrington, the seemingly harmless old shopkeeper, is a member of the thought police. This shocking revelation is followed by the appearance of black uniformed guards, signifying the inescapable reach of the party's surveillance and control. The capture of Winston and Julia is swift and brutal, highlighting the party's ruthlessness and efficiency in eliminating dissent. The smashing of the coral paperweight, a symbol of their shared past and their brief moment of beauty and freedom, signifies the destruction of their hopes and dreams. This chapter serves as a powerful reminder of the party's absolute power and the futility of individual rebellion in a totalitarian state. The suddenness and brutality of their arrest underscore the constant threat of surveillance and the danger of trusting anyone, even those who seem harmless or sympathetic. Chapter 10 of Part 2 connects to previous chapters and amplifies existing themes in the following ways. The capture of Winston and Julia fulfills the foreshadowing from earlier chapters, particularly the ominous warnings from O'Brien about the risks involved in rebelling against the party. The revelation of Mr. Charrington's true identity underscores the party's insidious methods of surveillance and control. This twist emphasizes the pervasive paranoia and lack of trust that characterize life in Oceania. The crushing of the paperweight symbolizes the destruction of beauty, hope, and individuality under the party's rule. This act of violence signifies the party's commitment to eliminating anything that could challenge its authority or provide a sense of individual identity. This chapter serves as a bridge between Part 2, which focused on Winston and Julia's rebellion, and Part 3, which details Winston's imprisonment and torture. The ending of Chapter 10 marks the beginning of Winston's descent into the depths of the Ministry of Love, where he will face the full force of the party's power and attempt to break his spirit. This pivotal moment leaves the reader with a sense of dread and uncertainty, wondering what fate awaits Winston and whether any hope for resistance remains. Imprisonment and Uncertainty, Entering the Ministry of Love. Chapter 1 of Part 3 in star 1984 star plunges the reader into the terrifying world of the Ministry of Love, marking a stark shift in tone and setting. Winston, captured at the end of Part 2, finds himself stripped of his freedom, identity, and hope. The chapter focuses on his disorientation, physical discomfort, and the pervasive atmosphere of fear and uncertainty that pervades the Ministry of Love. The chapter opens with Winston's disorientation. He is unsure of his location, assuming he is in the Ministry of Love but unable to confirm it. His surroundings are described as a high-ceilinged windowless cell with walls of glittering white, creating a sense of sterile isolation and sensory deprivation. This stark setting contrasts sharply with the cozy familiarity of Mr. Charrington's shop, emphasizing the abrupt transition from freedom to captivity. Winston's physical condition reflects his mental state. He is described as being in pain and preoccupied by fear and the pain in his belly, highlighting the immediate and tangible consequences of his capture. His hunger, coupled with the pain, reduces him to a state of near animalistic need. The chapter introduces the reader to the other prisoners in the Ministry of Love, further amplifying the atmosphere of fear and despair. Winston observes a clear distinction between the ordinary criminals and the party prisoners. The ordinary criminals seem almost indifferent to their situation, displaying a defiant attitude towards the guards and a casual disregard for the rules. In contrast, the party prisoners are characterized by their silence, terror, and isolation. They seem to fear even speaking to each other, highlighting the deep-seated paranoia instilled by the party's regime. The brief exchange Winston has with Ampleforth, a fellow party prisoner, reinforces the sense of hopelessness and the arbitrary nature of the party's justice system. Ampleforth, a poet, is unsure of why he has been arrested, admitting that there is only one offense. This exchange suggests that any deviation from the party's orthodoxy, however unintentional or insignificant, can lead to imprisonment and torture. The recurring motif of Room 101 adds a layer of chilling suspense to the chapter. Mentioned by other prisoners in hushed tones, it represents an unknown horror, a place of ultimate fear and suffering. The uncertainty surrounding Room 101 amplifies the sense of dread that pervades the Ministry of Love. The arrival of Parsons, Winston's neighbor and a seemingly devoted party member, further emphasizes the party's pervasive reach and the arbitrary nature of its justice system. Parsons' arrest for thoughtcrime, a crime he doesn't even seem to understand, highlights the insidious nature of the party's control and the impossibility of true loyalty in a society where even the most fervent supporters can become victims. The chapter ends with Winston's encounter with O'Brien, a high-ranking party member whom Winston had previously believed to be a fellow rebel. O'Brien's confirmation that he has always known about Winston's rebellion is a devastating blow, shattering any remaining hope Winston might have had for escape or understanding. This encounter sets the stage for the psychological and physical torture that Winston will endure in the subsequent chapters, confirming his worst fears about the nature of the party and the consequences of rebellion. Chapter 1 of Part 3 builds upon the themes and events of previous chapters in the following ways. It directly follows the dramatic events of Part 2 Chapter 10, where Winston and Julia are captured by the thought police, bringing the reader into the heart of the party's oppressive apparatus. The chapter reinforces the themes of surveillance and control that were prominent throughout Part 1 and 2, showing how the party maintains its power through fear, isolation, and the suppression of individual thought and expression. The introduction of Room 101 adds a new layer of terror and suspense to the narrative, foreshadowing the psychological torment that Winston will face. This chapter marks a significant turning point in 1984. Winston's transition from a rebellious individual to a helpless prisoner highlights the crushing power of the totalitarian state and the beginning of his long and brutal journey towards reintegration into the party's ideology. Torture and the crushing of the spirit. Chapter 2 of Part 3 in 1984 marks the beginning of Winston's systematic torture at the hands of the party. This chapter is particularly disturbing due to its graphic depiction of physical and psychological abuse and its exploration of the methods used by totalitarian regimes to break the human spirit. The chapter opens with Winston still disoriented and in pain, strapped to a bed-like apparatus in a cell that he believes to be in the depths of the Ministry of Love. His physical suffering is compounded by the constant threat of violence from a guard armed with a truncheon. The uncertainty and anticipation of pain create a state of perpetual terror for Winston, wearing him down psychologically before the actual torture begins. The arrival of O'Brien confirms Winston's worst fears. While Winston had once believed O'Brien to be a fellow dissenter, he now realizes the truth. O'Brien is a high-ranking member of the inner party, the very embodiment of the party's power and ruthlessness. O'Brien takes complete control of Winston's torture, alternating between inflicting pain, questioning him, and offering moments of respite. This calculated manipulation aims to break down Winston's resistance and force him to doubt his own sanity. O'Brien's torture methods are both physical and psychological. He uses a dial-controlled device to inflict varying levels of pain on Winston, while simultaneously bombarding him with questions designed to force him to betray his own memories and beliefs. Winston is pressured to accept the party's version of reality, even when it contradicts his own experiences and knowledge. For instance, O'Brien forces Winston to agree that Oceania has always been at war with Eastasia, despite Winston's clear memory of a time when they were allies. This manipulation of historical facts demonstrates the party's control over information and its ability to rewrite the past to suit its current agenda. O'Brien also uses Winston's past delusion about the innocence of 3 executed party members, Jones, Aronson, and Rutherford, to further undermine his sense of reality. By presenting fabricated evidence and insisting on its validity, O'Brien forces Winston to question his own perceptions and memories, leading him to doubt his sanity. This chapter highlights the power of psychological manipulation in totalitarian regimes. The party's goal is not simply to punish dissenters, but to completely break their spirit and force them to embrace the party's version of reality, even if it means denying their own experiences and memories. The chapter ends with a chilling affirmation of the party's ultimate goal, to remake Winston in its own image, erasing his individuality and replacing it with complete obedience and acceptance of the party's doctrine. This chilling prospect leaves the reader with a sense of dread and hopelessness, wondering if Winston will be able to withstand the ongoing torture and maintain any semblance of his former self. Chapter 2 of Part 3 connects to previous chapters and amplifies existing themes in 1984 It follows directly from Winston's arrest and imprisonment in the Ministry of Love, depicting the next stage in his journey of suffering and transformation. The chapter further emphasizes the themes of power, control, and the manipulation of truth that have been central to the narrative. Winston's torture and O'Brien's explanations offer a disturbing glimpse into the inner workings of the party and its methods for maintaining absolute power. This chapter is a pivotal point in 1984. It marks the beginning of Winston's psychological and physical breakdown and sets the stage for his ultimate confrontation with the party and its terrifying vision of the future. The nature of reality and the power of self-deception. Chapter 3 of Part 3 in Star 1984 Star explores the nature of reality and the party's manipulation of truth through the lens of Winston's ongoing torture and indoctrination. This chapter delves into the concept of doublethink and its role in maintaining the party's control over individual thought and perception. The chapter picks up with Winston still imprisoned in the Ministry of Love, enduring a seemingly endless cycle of torture and interrogation overseen by O'Brien. O'Brien reveals that the party's goal is not simply to punish Winston for his rebellion but to completely cure him, to reshape his mind until he fully embraces the party's ideology. O'Brien outlines 3 stages in this process: learning, understanding, and acceptance. He explains that Winston is now entering the second stage, understanding. This means moving beyond simply learning the party's doctrines to comprehending the underlying motivations and logic behind them. The chapter focuses on a key question that Winston had wrestled with even before his capture: why does the party seek power? O'Brien dismisses Winston's earlier assumptions that the party acts for the good of the people or to create a better society. Instead, he reveals the chilling truth: the party seeks power purely for the sake of power itself. This revelation strikes at the core of Winston's understanding of the world. He struggles to grasp this seemingly irrational motivation, but O'Brien patiently explains that the party's pursuit of power is an end in itself, not a means to achieve some other goal. O'Brien's explanation of the party's philosophy is one of the most disturbing and thought-provoking passages in Star 1984 Star. He argues that power is not about wealth, luxury, or happiness, but about the ability to control and manipulate others. He describes a future where the party's power is absolute, where individuals are completely subjugated to the collective will, and where any form of dissent or independent thought is ruthlessly crushed. This vision of the future is chillingly similar to the totalitarian regimes that existed in Orwell's time, and it serves as a stark warning about the dangers of unchecked power and the manipulation of truth. To illustrate the party's control over reality, O'Brien subjects Winston to a series of exercises designed to force him to deny his own perceptions. He famously forces Winston to agree that 2 + 2 = 5, if the party decrees it to be so. This scene highlights the power of psychological manipulation and the ability of totalitarian regimes to force individuals to accept even the most blatant lies. O'Brien's methods are not limited to physical torture. He also employs a range of psychological tactics to break down Winston's resistance. He constantly reminds Winston that his memories are unreliable, that the past can be altered, and that reality itself is subjective and controlled by the party. This manipulation of truth is designed to undermine Winston's sense of self and to force him to rely solely on the party for his understanding of the world. This chapter connects to earlier themes and events in Star 1984 Star in the following ways. It builds upon the concept of doublethink introduced in earlier chapters, demonstrating how the party uses this mental discipline to control its members and maintain its grip on power. It further explores the theme of the mutability of the past and the party's control over information, showing how history can be rewritten and manipulated to serve the party's agenda. It continues Winston's descent into psychological and physical degradation, leaving him increasingly vulnerable to the party's indoctrination. Chapter 3 of Part 3 marks a crucial turning point in Winston's struggle against the party. He is beginning to understand the true nature of the party's power and the methods it uses to control its citizens. However, this understanding comes at a terrible cost, as he is forced to confront the possibility that reality itself is malleable and that truth is ultimately determined by those in power. A fabricated hero and the distortion of reality. Chapter 4 of Part 3 in Star 1984 Star focuses on the falsification of history and the creation of propaganda through Winston's work at the Ministry of Truth. The chapter illustrates how the party manipulates information, fabricates events, and constructs heroic figures to maintain control and reinforce its ideology. The chapter opens with Winston immersed in his work at the Ministry of Truth, specifically tasked with rectifying past articles and news items in the Times to align with the party's current narrative. This process of rectification involves altering or completely fabricating information to erase inconsistencies, correct mistaken prophecies by Big Brother, and maintain the illusion of the party's infallibility. Winston receives messages outlining specific items requiring rectification. These messages, written in the abbreviated jargon of the ministry, highlight the party's meticulous control over even the smallest details of information dissemination. The messages direct Winston to alter. A speech by Big Brother that incorrectly predicted events on the war front. Economic forecasts that proved to be grossly inaccurate. A promise regarding chocolate rations that the party is about to break. An article that makes references to unpersons, individuals who have been erased from existence by the party. The party's manipulation of information is not simply about concealing mistakes or maintaining a facade of competence. It aims to shape the perception of reality itself, creating a world where the party's version of events is the only truth. The most striking example of this manipulation is Winston's assignment to rewrite an article about Big Brother's order for the day. The original article, deemed double plusungood, is problematic because it mentions individuals who have since been vaporized, making them unpersons. Instead of simply removing the references to these non-existent individuals, Winston decides to create a completely fabricated story. He invents a heroic party member named Comrade Ogilvy, a model citizen who embodies all the virtues the party promotes. Winston meticulously crafts Ogilvy's life story, from his childhood rejection of all toys except those related to war and party ideology to his heroic death while carrying important dispatches. This fabrication demonstrates the party's ability to manufacture not only events but also individuals, shaping public perception and promoting its ideology through carefully constructed narratives. This chapter links to earlier themes and events in 1984 in several ways. It reinforces the concept of the mutability of the past and the party's absolute control over information, showing how history is rewritten to suit the party's needs. It showcases the party's use of propaganda and the creation of heroic figures to inspire loyalty and obedience among its members. It emphasizes the importance of language as a tool of control, as Winston's work involves manipulating words and narratives to shape the perception of reality. Chapter 4 of Part 3 provides a chilling glimpse into the inner workings of the party's propaganda machine. It reveals the extent to which the party goes to control information, manipulate history, and fabricate narratives to maintain its power and enforce its ideology. The persistence of memory and the fragility of truth. Chapter 5 of Part 3 in 1984 contrasts the artificiality of party propaganda with the raw, visceral experiences of everyday life, highlighting the party's constant struggle to control not only information but also human emotion and memory. The chapter also introduces Syme, a character whose fate foreshadows the chilling consequences of intellectual engagement within the party's restrictive system. After fabricating Comrade Ogilvy in the previous chapter, Winston finds himself in a queue for razor blades, a mundane experience that underscores the scarcity and deprivation of life under party rule. This encounter with the everyday struggles of outer party members serves as a stark reminder of the gap between the party's propaganda about abundance and the reality of limited resources and constant shortages. Winston's encounter with Syme, a philologist working on the 11th edition of the Newspeak dictionary, further emphasizes the party's efforts to control language and thought. Syme's enthusiasm for newspeak is unsettling, as he boasts about the destruction of words and the simplification of language, ultimately aiming to eliminate any possibility of expressing unorthodox thoughts. Syme's intelligence and passion for newspeak, ironically, make him a target for the party. Winston predicts that Syme will be vaporized, recognizing that the party does not tolerate individuals who are too intelligent or capable of independent thought, even those seemingly loyal to the party's goals. During their lunch at the ministry canteen, Syme describes his fascination with the public hangings, emphasizing the gruesome details of the executions. This chilling conversation highlights the party's desensitization of its members to violence and brutality, normalizing cruelty as a means of control and reinforcing obedience through fear. The conversation shifts to the proles, whom Syme dismisses as non-human. His belief that the proles will eventually lose all knowledge of old speak and become completely subservient to the party's linguistic manipulation underscores the party's intention to create a society where thought itself is controlled. The party's efforts to control reality are further demonstrated by the constant barrage of propaganda emanating from the telescreen. The telescreen announces fabricated statistics about increased production and improved living standards, directly contradicting the lived experiences of Winston and his fellow outer party members. This blatant distortion of truth forces Winston to confront the fragility of memory and the power of the party to manipulate perceptions. Winston's internal struggle is emphasized by his recurring memory of a past incident where he encountered concrete evidence of the party's manipulation of historical facts. He remembers a photograph proving the innocence of 3 party members who were later executed as enemies of the state. However, the party successfully erased all evidence of this photograph, leaving Winston to question his own sanity and the validity of his memory. This chapter raises questions about the nature of truth and the power of collective belief. Despite the party's control over information, Winston's persistent memories challenge the party's version of reality, suggesting that individual experience and personal recollection can resist, at least internally, the overwhelming pressure to conform. Chapter 5 of Part 3 connects to earlier themes and events in Star 1984 Star in the following ways. The chapter expands on the themes of language control and thought manipulation introduced in earlier chapters, showcasing newspeak's role in limiting expression and shaping thought. It reinforces the party's control over information and its efforts to create an artificial reality that serves its agenda. The introduction and foreshadowed disappearance of Syme underscore the party's intolerance for independent thought, even among seemingly loyal members. Winston's struggle with memory emphasizes the tension between individual experience and the party's manufactured version of the past. Chapter 5 of Part 3 is crucial for understanding the party's methods for controlling thought and behavior. It showcases the party's manipulation of language, propaganda, and history, highlighting the dangers of a society where truth is malleable and individual thought is constantly under attack. O'Brien's invitation and the allure of rebellion. Chapter 6 of Part 3 in Star 1984 Star marks a turning point in Winston's journey, as he receives a cryptic invitation from O'Brien that both excites and terrifies him. This chapter explores the complexities of rebellion, the allure of the forbidden, and the dangerous consequences of challenging the party's absolute authority. Winston finds himself increasingly drawn to O'Brien, an inner party member who Winston believes shares his rebellious spirit. While attending a party function, Winston catches O'Brien's eye and senses a moment of understanding, a connection that transcends the party's enforced social divisions. O'Brien's seemingly unorthodox behavior, such as adjusting his spectacles in front of a telescreen, fuels Winston's belief that O'Brien harbors subversive thoughts. Winston's infatuation with O'Brien intensifies his desire to rebel against the party. He clings to the belief that a clandestine organization known as the Brotherhood exists, led by the enigmatic Emmanuel Goldstein. This belief offers Winston a glimmer of hope, the possibility of joining forces with others who share his opposition to the party's oppressive rule. Fueled by his encounter with O'Brien and his longing for rebellion, Winston embarks on a risky act of defiance. He revisits the Prole district, venturing into the junk shop where he previously purchased his diary and pen. This area, outside the watchful eyes of the telescreens and the constant surveillance of the party, offers Winston a brief respite from the suffocating atmosphere of Oceania. While in the junk shop, Winston engages in a conversation with the elderly owner, Mr. Charrington, hoping to glean information about the past and the party's rise to power. However, the conversation proves fruitless, as Mr. Charrington's memories are fragmented and unreliable, unable to offer any concrete evidence to challenge the party's version of history. Despite the lack of concrete information, Winston's visit to the Prole district reinforces his belief in the resilience of the human spirit. He observes the Proles' simple pleasures and their ability to connect with each other on a human level, a stark contrast to the party's enforced isolation and emotional detachment. This encounter strengthens Winston's conviction that hope for the future lies in the Proles, the only group with the potential to overthrow the party's tyranny. Upon returning to his apartment, Winston is filled with a sense of dread and foreboding. He contemplates suicide as an escape from the party's inevitable capture and torture. However, he ultimately decides to continue writing in his diary, clinging to the act of rebellion as a way of asserting his individuality and resisting the party's control over his thoughts. The chapter concludes with a chilling reminder of the party's omnipresence. As Winston writes in his diary, the telescreen interrupts with a triumphant announcement of a military victory. This intrusion underscores the party's ability to penetrate even the most private moments, highlighting the constant threat of surveillance and the impossibility of escaping the party's control. Chapter 6 of Part 3 connects to earlier themes and events in Star 1984 in the following ways. Winston's encounter with O'Brien reinforces the theme of hope and rebellion, suggesting the possibility of a hidden resistance movement operating within the party's ranks. Winston's visit to the Prole district emphasizes the contrast between the party's artificial world and the raw experiences of everyday life. The conversation with Mr. Charrington highlights the difficulty of accessing reliable information about the past and the party's efforts to erase history. The chapter's ending reinforces the theme of surveillance and the party's constant monitoring of its citizens' thoughts and actions. Chapter 6 of Part 3 deepens the reader's understanding of Winston's motivations and the dangers he faces in his quest for truth and freedom. It sets the stage for the next phase of Winston's rebellion, as his encounter with O'Brien leads him further down a path of resistance that will have profound consequences. Thank you for listening. I hope this content is useful to you. If you like this kind of content, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel to support our team.